What then is the collision of two strong voices, live on TV, without a script to cushion the impact? It was just going to be a quick guest spot. Mark Wahlberg, Hollywood's toughest leading man, had dropped by The View for what was to be a standard interview about his new movie. A few jokes, a few questions, some film clips, nothing unusual, but instead something no one anticipated happened. Not the producers, not the viewers, and certainly not Mark. The moment he stepped onto the stage, something seemed wrong. You know the sensation when a discussion gets colder than room temperature? Like someone smiling at you with teeth clenched? That's what this was. And opposite him sat Joy Behar, tongue-in-cheek, battle-hardened, and apparently restraining more than just questions. Now let's get real. Most of us have been there when a harmless disagreement quickly becomes personal. Perhaps it was at a dinner table, over a holiday, or with someone we thought we knew. It begins with a comment, followed by a challenge. Before you know it, you're not even sure how it got this heated, but there you are defending your character rather than your argument. That's precisely what went down here. But unlike your family room, this was national TV. Mark, with his gruff demeanor and rough around the edges candor, attempted to remain civil, attempted to keep his feet on the ground. But Joy? Oh no, she had other ideas. And what started out as tension disintegrated quickly into something more. Something uncomfortable, something raw. It wasn't political, not exactly. It wasn't even about Mark's movie. This was pride, wounds from the past, that thin line between telling the truth and swinging low to win. We've all messed up. We've all said something we wish we hadn't, held a grudge we shouldn't have. But there is a difference between disagreeing with someone and tearing them down, between having a difficult conversation and making it a takedown. So the question is, what do you do when someone finally says, enough? When the cameras are rolling, the lights are on, and someone stands for dignity over spectacle? What happens next is one of the most memorable live TV moments in recent history, a collision of values, ego, and history. And whether you're Team Mark or Team Joy, or somewhere in between, there's one thing we can likely agree on. Some scenes don't require a script. They simply require witnessing. Let's discuss what actually went down that day and why it hit such a chord nationwide. What occurs when one of Hollywood's strongest stars clashes with one of daytime TV's most vocal hosts? Mark Wahlberg believed he was simply visiting The View for the usual promo interview. Nothing unusual, but what he stepped into? That was a whole different thing. The tension was so palpable, producers were left scrambling backstage, and security was quietly alerted. This was not your run-of-the-mill celebrity Q&A. It became a powerful display of how long-standing tensions and personal beliefs can detonate before a live studio audience. Before we dive into the whole story, subscribe and leave a comment below, because this one just gets crazier the further we go. So imagine this. Mark Wahlberg, sharp as a tack, walking out onto the View stage. He tugs at his tie, flashes that quintessential smile of his, and addresses the clapping audience. The clapping seemed warm, familiar even. But then he saw the look in Joy Behar's eyes, and it froze him in mid-step. Mark's no novice to interviews. He's dealt with hard-nosed critics and tough questioning reporters many times. But there was something about Joy's demeanor that made him think this was not going to be the easy, informal interview his publicist had assured him. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The View. I'm Joy Behar, she started, her tone holding that distinctive bite longtime viewers so fondly recognize. We've got Mark Wahlberg here today. And Mark, I have to say, I've been waiting a long time to talk to you. Mark settled into his chair with that Boston-bred swagger, as cool as always. Thanks for having me, Joy. Always great to be here with you girls. Joy didn't skip a beat. Oh, is it though? Her grin was sly, like that of a cat stalking prey. Because I seem to remember you've had some very harsh things to say about individuals in my line of work. Something about actors who consider themselves political pundits? You could sense the tension change in the studio. The crowd fell silent. This wasn't good-natured teasing. This was personal. Mark's jaw clenched, but only slightly. He remained calm, though. I think that was said a little out of context, Joy. Joy raised an eyebrow and started rifling through her cue cards with dramatic flair. Is it, though? Because I have the quote right here. She brandished the paper like a piece of courtroom evidence. Some of these Hollywood types need to stick to what they know instead of lecturing working-class Americans about politics. Ring any bells? Mark leaned in, voice steady but unmistakably firm. That wasn't aimed at anyone in particular, Joy. And honestly, I stand by it, Mark said, his voice calm but firm. There's a big difference between having an opinion and talking down to people. Joy's eyebrows shot up, her voice heavy with sarcasm. Talking down to people? Now that's rich, coming from someone who's made a whole career playing the street tough. Tell me, Mark, When did you last become the voice of working class Americans? The atmosphere in the studio changed, tension building like steam off a kettle. You could almost sense the audience tense. Co-hosts such as Whoopi Goldberg glanced at each other nervously. This was meant to be a breezy promo block, not a live confrontation. But there they were. Mark's jaw clenched once more. The Boston twang crept into his voice more strongly now, revealing the emotions seething beneath. "I never said I represented anyone," he said. "I am from Dorchester, though, Joy. I know what it is to struggle, to balance jobs just to keep the lights on. I didn't grow up in some affluent area joking about other people's actual world issues." Joy's expression sharpened. "Ivory Tower? That what you think this is?" Her voice rose just enough to draw a few uncomfortable coughs from the audience. "Let me tell you something, Mark. I've been in this business longer than you've been famous. I've earned the right to speak my mind, and I've earned the right to challenge opinions when they sound off base." Mark didn't flinch. "And you get to sit here day after day raking in the millions, dictating to people how they should think, how they should vote, how they should live. And the people sitting at home watching are wondering how they're going to be able to pay the rent." Silence, not a whisper from the audience, not even a stifled laugh. The air was thick with tension, cuttable with a knife. Whoopi bent forward a little, attempting to change the mood. "Perhaps we ought to have a break," but Joy brushed her off like a gnat. No, I want to hear this," she said, leaning back in her chair with a self-satisfied smirk. "Go on, Mark, please. Illume us. Tell us what we're doing wrong on our platform. Do we just cover fluff? The weather? Perhaps cover your new action movie and try not to ask anything that does matter?" Mark's fingers wrapped into fists on the table, not in anger, but to stabilize himself. He breathed, then looked Joy straight in the eye. "You know what, Joy? You're illustrating my point exactly right now. You don't want an honest conversation. You just want to be right. You care more about scoring points than really listening. You don't like what I said, so you're attempting to turn it into a personal hit job." Joy's reaction was quick, stinging, and unfiltered. "What you said was ignorant," she snapped, any residual politeness now extinguished. "You want to chat about the working class? I was from Brooklyn. My father was a truck driver. Don't stand there and lecture me about what struggle is. Why do you behave as if you're superior to everyone else?" Mark's tone was rising now, not just frustrated, but glaringly angry. His notoriously short temper was beginning to flare. "Why do you sit there day after day ridiculing anyone who doesn't share your view of the world? Laughter at their values, at their beliefs?" Joy emitted a stinging, mocking laugh that rang awkwardly through the studio set. "Their values? Your value, like the ones that got you in trouble with the law. How often when you were growing up? The same values that resulted in hate crimes?" The studio was silent, not a peep, just a ripple of shocked silence. Mark's face dropped, first going pale, then flushing deep red with fury. "That's a low blow even for you, Joy." Joy didn't flinch. "Is it, though? If we're going to talk about values, maybe we should be honest about your past. Not just the polished Hollywood version of you. Let's talk about the real Mark Wahlberg." Mark shoved his chair back and stood quickly, the legs screeching against the floor. "You know what? This is the exact problem. You can't simply disagree with a person. You must tear them down. You can't discuss ideas without making it personal." "Sit down, Mark," Joy said icily. "We're not finished here." "Yes, we are," he responded, remaining upright. His hands shook marginally, more from anger than terror. "This is not an interview. It's a setup, a takedown. And I'm not going to sit here and let you make it your own personal show." The cameras remained fixed, recording every second of the increasing standoff. Meanwhile, upstairs in the control room, producers rushed frantically behind the scenes, with no idea how they were going to get the live broadcast back on track. But this was no longer a segment anymore. This was something else, and it was all happening in real time. Joy's eyes gleamed, like she was satisfied to finally have cracked Mark's composure. He was standing there, rattled, on the defensive, and she wasn't about to let up. "Oh, now you're going to walk away," she said, her voice thick with sarcasm. "That's mature, Mark. Real working-class hero behavior." Mark clenched his fist tighter. "I'm not walking away from anything. I'm just not going to be part of your circus." "My circus?" Joy laughed again, that same piercing, slicing laugh that had begun to grate on all of them. "You guessed it on my program, Mark. You're in my home. And if you can't bear the heat, perhaps you shouldn't have entered the kitchen." Whoopi leaned forward again, obviously attempting to get the moment back on track. Her voice was gentle but strained. "Perhaps we can change gears here, Joy. Discuss Mark's new movie." But Joy didn't so much as glance in her direction. Her gaze remained fixed on Mark. "No, Whoopi. I think our viewers need to know precisely what they're getting themselves into. Mark wants to discuss values and working-class pride? Okay, let's go there." Mark eased himself slowly back into his seat. His jaw was clenched, his body rigid. "Fine, let's discuss it. But let's be real about this, Joy. Something you have trouble with." "Oh, you want real?" Joy asked, her tone becoming harder. Here's real. You're a rich actor who's lost touch with where he came from. You've earned more money being tough on screen than most actual people will ever see over a lifetime. Mark's response came softly, but the intensity behind the words was clear. You think I've forgotten where I came from? You think just because I've made it? I have not forgotten how it felt to have nothing, said Mark, his voice shaking with emotion. I recall seeing my mom working 3 jobs just to have food on the table. Joy waved her hand in the air, swishing it aside like an annoying fly. Oh, spare me. The poor little rich boy act. Maybe that will work with some, but not with me. You want to go get all brought up about your mother? Then try thinking about how she'd feel, seeing you rail against people who are simply trying to make the world a better place. Make the world a better place? Mark's voice cracked with disbelief. By doing what, Joy? Sitting here day after day, dividing people, turning every disagreement into a joke, treating anyone who thinks differently like they're beneath you? I treat stupid people like they're stupid, Joy snapped. And right now, you're acting pretty stupid. Gasps rippled through the audience. A few folks in the front row even looked genuinely stunned. The tension had officially crossed into something far beyond heated debate. This was hostile, even personal. Everyone in that room could feel it. Mark leaned forward slowly, his voice dropping into a low, intense whisper, the kind you've heard in more than a few of his movie roles. You know what's stupid, Joy? Thinking because you have a platform that makes you right to be cruel. Thinking people watch just to hear you rip others apart. Cruel? Joy laughed again, but this time it was a forced sound, shaky. You think I'm being cruel? Oh, sweetheart, you haven't seen anything yet. Mark's eyes narrowed. Don't call me sweetheart. His voice was icy, razor-edged. And yes, you are cruel. You're everything that's rotten in this business, Joy. In this entire industry. You're a bully with a microphone. Joy's face grew red, her lips tightening. A bully? That's a laugh, coming from someone who literally attacked people in the street. At least I fight with my words, not my fists. Mark shook his head in dismay. There it is again. You just can't make your point without making it personal. You can't prevail on logic or facts, so you go rummaging around in a person's history. It's pathetic. I'm pathetic. Joy's tone rose to a shriek, her dignity beginning to break down. You're the one who's built a whole career out of playing the same role in all of your movies. You believe being Boston-born makes you a moral authority. You believe sounding tough makes you intelligent. Mark didn't flinch. You sit in that chair every day and poison the well, Joy. You take actual people's pain, actual problems that are worthy of empathy, and you reduce them to jokes. You make their struggles a part of your routine. That struck a chord. Joy sprang to her feet, standing upright now, mirroring Mark's initial action. You don't know what you're saying, she snapped. I've done more for social justice, for women's rights, for liberal causes than you have in your whole career. Oh, really? Mark shot back, teasing her. By doing what? Preaching to the choir? Telling the same jokes to the same people every day? Shouting down anybody who has the nerve to think otherwise? I fight for what's right from my platform, Joy said, her tone hardening, now desperate sounding. By defying bullies such as you, Joy responded defiantly. Bullies like me? Mark reiterated with a bitter laugh, but there wasn't even the hint of humor in it. Joy, look around. Look at what you're doing right now. You brought me here with false pretenses. This was to be a promotional interview, but instead you jumped on me on live TV, and now you're labeling me the bully. The studio was quiet. Not awkward quiet, but suffocating, uncomfortable quiet. Even the camera operators had frozen, observing this confrontation in real time, raw and spontaneous. Whoopi attempted one more time to diffuse. Maybe we should really take a break. No, Joy interrupted firmly. We're finishing this discussion. Mark had come here to sell his film, and I believe our viewers deserve to know what kind of individual they're being asked to support. Mark let out a bitter chuckle. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about me. This is about you, Joy. It's about the way you've turned political conversation into a combat sport. You've made it nearly impossible for people to disagree respectfully anymore. Civil conversation? Joy's voice became mocking. Such as the one you had with that Vietnamese man you beat up as a teen? Oh, wait, that wasn't a conversation, was it? That was you acting violent. The room came to a standstill. Mark's face shifted. He paled, then flushed, then paled again. When he finally spoke, his voice was little more than a whisper, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up. You see what, Joy? You just demonstrated everything I've been asserting. You're not advocating for justice. You're not advancing progress. You're simply bent on hurting people. You want to win, no matter the expense. I'm fighting for the truth, Joy responded, but even she did not sound convinced of it anymore. No, Mark replied, standing once more, his voice even but biting. You're arguing for your version of the truth. You don't desire an honest discussion. You want to make any disagreement look small. You want to be the sharpest mind in the room, even if that means being the nastiest. Joy's mask started slipping. Her confidence broke. You don't get to lecture me on cruelty, she shot back. You don't get to come onto my show and lecture me on how to do my job. And you certainly don't get to pretend that you're the victim here. Mark didn't bat an eye. This isn't journalism, Joy. And it's not even entertainment anymore. This is just nasty. It had all reached a boiling point. Both of them were giving it everything they had. Both had been pushed way out of their comfort zone, and the audience could sense it. No one applauded. No one shifted in their seats. You could have heard a pin drop. Security had subtly edged its way to the edge of the set, prepared to step in if things continued. The producers in the control room were panicking, trying to find a way to keep what had become one of the most surprising turns in daytime TV history on television. Joy glanced around, at last realizing how the atmosphere in the room had changed. She no longer appeared to be in charge. Her words no longer hit with force. Mark stood steady, gasping for air, his eyes fixed on hers, watching. The tension in the room was oppressive. Nobody had any idea what was going to happen next. And then, Joy committed her fatal error. With a smile that would haunt her the remainder of her career, she shot Mark straight in the eye and gave him a line that immediately shifted everything. You know what, Mark? Maybe you should return to your Boston neighborhood and remain there. Leave the thinking up to folks who at least know what they're discussing. Mark's eyes have narrowed. My little Boston community, the one with actual people living there, the one with people doing legitimate jobs and not raking in millions being mean on television? Joy rolled her eyes in a scoffing gesture. Yeah, legitimate jobs. Like dealing drugs? Like beating people up? Because that's what you were up to prior to Hollywood whitewashing you, wasn't it? That was it. The line had officially been crossed. So far over, there was no recovering. Mark stepped forward toward Joy's chair, and at once, 3 security guards quietly edged closer to the stage, prepared for anything. You seriously want to continue down that path, Joy? Mark's voice was cold as ice, quiet but deadly. Because I can play games too. You want to discuss my history? Sure. Let's discuss yours. Let's discuss your unsuccessful career in comedy. Let's discuss how you weren't able to be a true entertainer, so you crafted your brand out of destroying people. Joy's face went white. You don't know what you're talking about, she said, her words cracking like ice. Don't I? Mark's smile was unforgiving and harsh. I know you're a resentful woman who strikes out at whoever crosses you. I know you've made a career not of talent, but of outrage. Because if you didn't stir the pot, nobody would pay attention to what you have to say. How dare you, Joy whispered, but the bite had gone. It was more of a protest tinged with plea. How dare I what? Mark retorted. Tell the truth? You opened your mouth. You brought me out here to shame me, to destroy me before your listener. And let me tell you, you accomplished that, but not the way you imagine. You simply demonstrated them exactly who you are. Whoopi finally intervened, speaking softly but firmly. Mark, perhaps we should all take a step back here. Calm things down somewhat. No, said Mark, still staring at Joy. Let's get on with it. She wanted to discuss character? All right, let's discuss character. He spoke steadily, but with a great weight. Who is this kind of character to ambush a guest on TV? Who is this kind of character to turn an interview visit into public shaming? Who is this kind of person who digs up someone's past, not for truth, but entertainment? Joy's hands were shaking now. You attacked me first, she defended. You called me out. I called out your behavior, Mark corrected. I didn't get personal until you did. I didn't bring up your past until you brought up mine. The difference? I can own my actions. Can you? The studio audience sat paralyzed, leaning forward, eyes wide. This was no longer TV. This was something raw, something real. It was a public unraveling, and no one could tear their eyes away. My actions? Joy's voice went up in pitch, desperation seeping through. My actions are about standing up for what's right, about standing up to individuals like you, individuals who believe they can bully women. Mark released a brief, bitter laugh. No sense of humor, just incredulity. Intimidate women? Joy, please. You are not a victim here. You've been the instigator since the minute I set foot on this stage. You've been trying to bring me down. You've been the intimidating one. I'm asking hard questions, Joy lashed out. That's what reporters do. Journalists? Mark appeared shocked. You consider yourself a journalist? Journalists pose difficult questions to discover the truth. You pose questions to sensationalize, to gain headline. You're not here for truth. You're here for drama. You're a shock jock with a morning show slot. That stung. Joy winced, just briefly. Her expression crumpled like a slipping mask, but the blaze returned soon. Leave, she told him, softly at first. Huh? Mark asked, taken aback. I told you to get out. Joy's voice grew loud. Get off my show. Get out of my studio. I don't have to sit here and be insulted. Mark froze, looking at her, trying to make sense out of what he just heard. You're pushing me off? He protested, half laughing. You ambush me. You bring up my history. You attempt to embarrass me in front of the entire nation. And now you're ejecting me? Yes, Joy said, standing and gesturing curtly toward the side of the set. It's my show. I get to decide who gets to stay, and you're finished. Mark shook his head slowly, the rage leaving his face to be replaced by something colder, certain. You know what, Joy? This is perfect. Absolutely perfect. You brought me here. You set me up. You made it personal. And the moment I pushed back, you couldn't take it. You've just proven every single point I made about you, Mark said, speaking calmly but firmly. Security, Joy shouted, her voice breaking. Please remove Mr. Wahlberg from the set. The guards flinched. This wasn't something they did. Mark wasn't being aggressive or obnoxious. He was just holding his ground. And anyone who had seen could tell this hadn't been a fair fight. Mark threw up his arms in a peaceful gesture. It's all right, he said. I'll go. But not because you're expelling me. I'm going because I respect myself too much to stay here and be assaulted by someone who's lost sight of decency. He started walking in the direction of the door. Then he stopped and glanced back once more. Know what the saddest thing is, Joy? You had an opportunity today, an actual opportunity. You could have shown people that even when we disagree on things, we can still speak to one another with courtesy. You could have taken this moment to unite people. Instead, you took the easy route. You chose to live down your worst detractors. You chose to be the villain. Joy's face was red, equally of anger and humiliation. Just leave, she snarled. I am, Mark said, but I hope your viewers take note of this moment. I hope they remember who began this and who attempted to terminate it, who remained respectful and who did not, who did like a professional and who did like a bully. He spun and strode off set. The room remained still. No laughter, no applause, only the oppressive enormity of what had happened. Joy was rigid, her hands shaking. It struck her, perhaps not all at once, but certainly enough to hurt, that she hadn't merely blown up. She'd lost something much more precious. She had just given Mark Wahlberg his greatest win in public life, not because he had bested her, but because she did all the things he accused her of doing. And she did it on television, in front of millions of people. The cameras kept rolling as Mark disappeared through the stage exit. And in his wake, he left behind a stunned crew, a silent audience, and a host who had just burned her own credibility to the ground. The confrontation was over, but the fallout had just begun. Whoopi, ever the professional, tried to pick up the pieces. We'll be right back after this commercial break, but everyone knew there was no turning back from this. The episode would forever be etched in the annals of daytime TV history as the most explosive on-the-air moment in The View's history. And at the heart of it all was one irrefutable fact. Joy had crossed the line. In the days and hours that followed, social media would explode. Videos of the altercation would be inescapable. Headlines would dissect every glance, every utterance, every fraught minute. And through it all, one thing would stand excruciatingly clear. Mark Wahlberg showed up on The View to hawk a movie, but he departed as the unmistakable victor in one of the most uneven showdowns the show had ever witnessed. He got kicked off the show, perhaps, but he left with something stronger than a promotional plug. He left with his integrity in hand. Joy, however, had lost something that she could never recover: the respect of her viewers and the credibility of her voice. The fight had ended, but the dialogue it began would resound for years to come. And whenever anyone looked back on what they had done that day, they would be thinking about who remained level-headed, who became personal, who had their head held high, and who stood amidst the ruins of their own creation.